Finally, the defense headquarters has now confirmed there was a coup plot to topple President Bola Tinubu's government. In a statement released on Monday, Director of Defence Information Samaila Uba said investigations into coup attempt have been concluded and officers involved will be arraigned before relevant military and judicial panels. He said the findings showed that some of the officers had cases to answer over allegations of plotting to overthrow the government, and that the investigation report has now been forwarded to the appropriate superior authority. In October of 2025, the DHQ announced the arrest of 16 officers over acts of indiscipline and breaches of service regulations. The officers include Brigadier General Musa Abubakar Sadiq, Colonel M.A. Maiji, Lieutenant Colonel S. Bapa, Lieutenant Colonel A.A. Hayatu, Private Dangnap, Lieutenant Colonel M. Almakura, Major M.M. Jida, Major M.A. Usman, Major D. Yusuf, Major I. Dauda, Captain Ibrahim Bello, Captain A.A. Yusuf, Lieutenant S.S. Felix, Lieutenant Commander D.B. Abdullahi, and Squadron Leader S.B. Adamu. For this conversation, let's turn to a security expert, Awwal Aliyu, as well as a lawyer, Jide Ologun, who joins us here in the studio. Gentlemen, okay, I understand we don't have Awwal at the moment, but we do have Jide Ologun here in the studio. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, what is it with our leaders with denial of an occurrence and then only turn around to confirm that this actually happened?
You know, there are two sides to it. On a matter so crucial like this, there was a need to have a comprehensive investigation, you know, and that was the excuse given. And of course, the spokesperson that denied then and disclosed that those were just issues of internal indiscipline and unethical actions from the military officers, you know, is no longer there. And now another spokesperson is saying that that coup attempt has been confirmed and the matter will be referred to the appropriate disciplinary panel. And talking about denial, it may be one of the public relations challenges that the government of Nigeria has, because like you also requested to know why. And I guess if I can say why, and some will respond by saying perhaps thorough attention is not given to issues, or that on the spur of the moment we just like to deny. But apparently, when I read that the parade that was to, you know, visit the independence celebration was cancelled, I suspected something was fishy. But here we are now, it's been confirmed, and then they will have to face the necessary disciplinary institutions.
Okay, I'll come to the trust issue subsequently if we have time, but more importantly is the statement saying that they will they've sent the reports to the appropriate authority and they will be court-martialed. In a case like this, is court-martialing adequate, or should there be a follow-up with a civilian court, considering it's such a weighty allegation toppling a government?
By virtue of Section 1 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it's a huge one, it's a treason. And the precedent is already laid. It was Major Kaduna Nzegu that established the martial law on the 15th of January 1966, when he suspended the constitution of the First Republic. And since then, the military have been engaging it. And in 1976, some coup plotters were dealt with, you know, executed by firing squad. And again, in 1986 or thereabout, when Mama Batsa, who allegedly planned a coup against IBB, and some of those who were accused with him were also executed. So the crime of planning a coup or carrying out a coup is attract a severe punishment, capital punishment, or life imprisonment, now that we are under a democratic dispensation. But by and large, the martial law still operates to say, let the military attend to it. But that is not to say that if there are civilians who are involved, because even as far back as December last year, we read that some civilians may be involved in planning that alleged coup. One of them reportedly already out of the country, and he was at the time even trying to, speak to the government from there. So, but the law must take its course. But as mentioned earlier, now that we're in a democratic system, and that globally the world is moving away from implementing capital punishment, let's see how it flows. But if you also look at the Nigerian Armed Forces Act 2004, the punishment prescribed for coup is capital punishment. So, but let's see how it's going. I mean, all these are subject to, again, what the findings of the panel will be, because right now they have been prepared for questioning and further.
Yeah, I mean, 3 months. Yeah. There was that denial. It wasn't like, okay, it's just, they said internal. They did not acknowledge that such a humongous attempt was made to just derail this country, as it were. Now, we had a situation not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. Kaduna State government also denied the legitimacy of the investigations that are to follow. Will this denial play a role in the process of questioning the validity of the claims that they are now coming to say happened?
Basically, the denial will not interfere with the procedures of the military. But when you talk of the reputation capital of the country, it's a huge one, because we are talking of a whole nation, and we must be seen to be thorough in what we do. But again, as mentioned earlier, that is a public relations challenge. Perhaps what would have happened was to have kept quiet over everything, which again is denial, or to have rushed into. But let me come out with this advice. If you look at the case of Ekweremadus in the UK, thorough investigations were concluded before the prosecution, and that is why there was no delay and everything went on to conclusion. Because when you talk about the criminal justice ecosystem, you talk of thorough investigation, you talk of diligent prosecution before a committed judiciary, except that in this case now, the military intervention will be involved. So perhaps for the wisdom of some of the stakeholders, it was denied. And you know that currently within the ECOWAS community, we've been having different kinds of coup attempts. Even the one that happened in Benin Republic.
Yeah, but looking at the status of Nigeria in Africa, I mean, we still claim to be the giant of Africa, and then we have this scenario play out. How do you think this truth deficit or delayed telling of the truth pending investigation, how will it impact our global diplomatic relationship with others? What perception does this present to the outside world, and how may we manage it?
We have that negative perception, but then I respect the military for having professional public relations practitioners in there. But sometimes also, you are subject to authority. And of course, when you engage the military and the police, sometimes they tell you that in the interest of national security, some informations may not be disclosed. And so perhaps this...
But doesn't that become null? Because if you say in the interest of national security, what's the initial reason why you chose not to make that announcement? 3 months down the line, you confirmed. The case of Kaduna State was just the very next day they confirmed.
The case of Kaduna State, I particularly am not happy about what happened in Kaduna State.
No, the crux of what I'm trying to find, I'm speaking to, asking here, is this denial. They say national security. Even the Kaduna State, they said they're enemies of the state. They want to derail the peace that was in the state.
There may be no excuse for what happened in Kaduna State. It was an apparent case. And I think the Commissioner of Police should be further investigated, particularly when we have the suspicion that they are sponsors of terrorism against the nation, and there are those who have bias for Christian persecution. I mean, there was a scenario in Nigeria where a police officer committed suicide because he was in charge of the armory and he was supplying armor to the terrorists. So that is a different case entirely.
So okay, I guess I should rephrase that question and ask you, are there laws addressing scenarios like this, denial and confirmation, depending on how the denial was framed? If not, should we have something like that? Because this is not a one-off, it's a repeated occurrence.
It's an ethical issue. Constitutionally speaking, there is no law that says you must disclose, except you now go to, you want to find out some facts from the government, like the Freedom of Information Act.
Do they necessarily need to disclose, but say we're investigating something?
That's what they said, but it's perceived as denying that something of that nature happened. But some of us already concluded, even while the government was denying, because as a chief superintendent of police, I was disturbed by why was the parade that should have made the independence celebration colorful cancelled. And immediately I knew something must be wrong. But like I said, in the wisdom of the military, they probably at that point did not want to hit up the policy or be sure of what, but it's commendable that the suspects were apprehended, because it could have been worse if they carried out their intentions. And for the role Nigeria plays in ECOWAS, it would have been an ugly situation. So, but right now, like you brilliantly mentioned, I pray that we learn to really disclose. Indeed, we've denied several things. Even right now, we have one going on. Somebody who is declared ambassador designate who was never screened by the Senate and things like that, and how that name featured is another thing, and the government is retracting that disclosure. So by and large, we must be seen to be up and above the game. I mean, we are talking of national issues.
I have one question for you again. Hopefully we have time for that. But our second guest have now joined us. Awwal Aliyu is a security analyst. Thank you very much for being here with us. After months of denial, now we have confirmation. Why was this development so shrouded in denial until now?
Well, thank you very much for having me. You see, issue of national security is a very paramount issue that you don't just discuss it just anyhow. And then most especially that it has to do with mutiny. You know, in the military, coup attempt or even discussing it is seen as mutiny. So issues that has to do with mutiny in a democratic dispensation is too strict for somebody to just come out and start discussing it until it is confirmed to be true. What if it was mentioned that there was an attempted coup plot, and later it was discovered that it was not a coup plot? Will the government now come back after saying
was there a need? It's the same question and conversation I've been having with Jide, but was there a need to make a statement when investigation was still ongoing? And if national security is the reason that's being given repeatedly, couldn't they have framed it in another way other than saying it was an internal issue? It wasn't an internal issue. It was a national issue.
Okay, let me quickly remind you of two statements. The initial one was said internal issue. The second one, if you remember, it was said it deals on discipline. And then as far as the military is concerned, when you speak about mutiny, that is indiscipline in the military. So it says it borders on issue of military discipline. And that is a good way of giving it a proper cover until it is thoroughly and properly investigated and the reality is brought out. Then it can be mentioned in the right word that is supposed to be mentioned. Now this issue has been taken before the President and Commander-in-Chief it has been briefed and is going through it. And after going through it, then he has the final say on what needed to be done or what not need to be done, or the next action that needed to be taken as far as the whole issue is concerned.
Okay, this is an important question, so I'm going to read it the way I wrote it here. How might our security balance the need for accountability with the need to maintain stability and avoid further unrest? Because if you say that you are trying to avert some security challenge or protect the country, and then the people feel like wouldn't that curiosity make people do worse out of fear?
No, you see, that is the more reason why it has to be, the word have to be condoned, it has to be controlled, it has to be mitigated, so that fear will not be in the people. You know, we are in a democratic dispensation. Nigeria is a very large country. You know that Nigeria is the biggest country in the whole, the biggest black nation in the whole world. And a lot of the whole African countries are looking up to Nigeria for leadership. So if we have certain kind of challenge or coup d'etat scare in Nigeria, it might send a very bad signal. In fact, it might give room for other smaller countries to begin to do some funny things within their own country. So Nigeria needed to, as a big brother, needed to control the situation, needed to have a proper cover for the statement until proper investigation is done and the reality is unraveled. Then you can begin to bring it out. In any case, the issue is under control. These guys that attempted to do that mutiny are already in hand. Investigation has been going on, a thorough investigation for that matter. And then there is a report that has been presented to the president for his overall, more like for his information. And he's on that report, the president has also been advised. Naturally, the report will go there, and there will be an advice to the president, left for the president to decide on which way to go. If he decides that these guys be court-martialed, they will surely be court-martialed. If he decides otherwise, he is the president and commander-in-chief.
Well, I'm sure we have not.
Under him.
I'm very sure we've not had the last of this development. We'll keep our eyes on it and continue to have conversations. Thank you very much, Awwal, for speaking with us. And Jide, I had another question, but we're out of time, so I'll just say thank you so much.
We have to create more time. So we monitor as the events, but we must prevent further insecurity in the land. And that means the law must have its course.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.